Moving on, India's fintech and digital lending industry is one of the fastest growing segments in the financial sector. With a projected market size of $720 billion by 2030, we gear up this year. As for the union budget, we're keen to see how it will give the fintech industry what it needs to keep innovating and expanding. And joining me now is Priyanka Kanwar, the founder of Falcon. Also with me is my colleague Arundhati. Priyanka, welcome to Startup Street. Last budget, the government allocated 1,500 crore rupees in incentives to fintechs and banks. So capital is welcome, but it is not a constraint for the BFSI space in India, as it is one of the most capitalized sectors in India. So beyond capital infusion, Priyanka, what is the big ask from the finance minister for this budget?
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Shruti, and for asking the fintech sector about our expectations. You're absolutely right. You know, there has been plenty of capital allocation already. What's very interesting for me, Shruti, is that the India stack with protocols like UPI, account aggregator, DigiLocker, as we all know, has already brought about inclusion in the payment ecosystem at an unprecedented rate, thereby also enhancing transparency, boosting government revenues. Now, what for me is a really big theme is that how do we take this base of millions of new digital payment users and integrate them into the formal financial sector? I am talking about access to innovative financial services like short-term credit, loans, fixed income, and insurance. And so the critical question really is that how do we transform these advancements into monetizable, innovative financial products for the end user? I think, Shruti, the answer here lies in empowering, the two key players driving the transformation at the last mile, which is banks and fintechs. I would love to see a few key themes in the budget coming up, not only in Feb, but also in July, which is, accelerating the shift for banks towards modern cloud-native technology, strengthening fintech bank partnerships, and also, most importantly for me, encouraging more female participation in fintech.
All right, encouraging more female participation in fintech also being one of your asks. Hi, Priyanka, Arundhati here. Now, reports also suggesting that fintech lending will surpass traditional bank lending by 2030. Now, for this to be possible, digital lending solutions must be rolled out beyond the metros, right? Reaching small businesses and consumers in Tier 3 cities and beyond. So what do you think needs to be done to ensure that this happens?
So I think, Arundhati, that's a great question. And, for me, what is really critical, like I said, whether it is digital lending or fixed income products or any other products, that we're talking about here, which are advanced, right? The key players here in terms of delivery of these financial services, distribution of these financial services are banks and fintechs. So when you talk about banks, right, we strongly believe that in order for banks to deliver the next generation of financial products, whether it is in metros or especially, of course, beyond metros in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, we need the adoption of modern banking technology. I think it's critical. While the government has taken some welcome strides to increase access by providing its own cloud computing facility, I think this can be further optimized by providing benefits such as subsidized rates, incentives like tax rebates for using such facilities to financial institutions. So I think that is a very, very key point. Another point, Arundhati, for me is really strengthening fintech bank partnerships. I think fintechs have already proven that they can be very, very important distribution partners to banks. So for me, I think one of the most important themes is that despite the proliferation of fintech startups, unfortunately, Arundhati, what I've seen on the ground is that even after funding support from VCs to a lot of these startups, they're simply unable to get off the ground due to hesitancy of banks to onboard early stage startups, right, due to potential economic losses or regulatory scrutiny. So while the regulatory sandbox by RBI is a right first step in this direction, I think the government can also consider offering subsidies, rebates, or other compliance relaxations to help banks increase their risk-taking appetite and onboard more fintechs.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, just want to go back to something that you were just mentioning. A robust digital infrastructure is designed for seamless integration with existing systems, improving efficiency, convenience, and of course, security. And one of the big demands for the sector is a supportive innovation ecosystem to foster research, collaboration, and incubation of emerging technologies like AI, blockchain, and cloud computing that you were mentioning, and to address evolving customer needs. Your thought on all of these?
So yeah, so I think, like I mentioned, Shruti, to sort of encourage all of this, I think a couple of things are very important. Number one, that banks start actually investing, because ultimately, the last mile is all led by banks. Any of these technologies we are talking about, whether it's blockchain or AI, all of this ultimately is facilitated by banks who have the power to issue and process the instruments that we're talking about. So, if you look at the statistics, Indian banks currently only spend about 2 to 2.5% of their budget on IT, whereas this needs to go up to a global standard of about 7 to 8%. So, that's the kind of gap that we are talking about here. And I think, unless that gap is addressed, unless adoption of this modern tech that I'm talking about, banking tech, increases, a lot of the innovations that we discuss every day cannot be sort of achieved at the last man.
Right.
So for me, that's a huge point.
All right, Priyanka, we're completely out of time. We had a few more questions for you, but no time on the show today. But thank you so much for joining us with what you expect from the budget this year.
Thank you so much. Lovely being here.
And staying with budget expectations.